it was one of the Nephis we were reading, and I had this impression after we finished to ask her to be baptized. Is that the Spirit talking to me, or am I just like, I just laid it on the table for her and said, will you follow the example of Jesus Christ by being baptized? And she sat there for a second, kind of stunned by it. And she just was like, yeah, I will.
All right. Thank you all for joining us on the first episode of The Best Mission Stories. We have a wonderful guest today that I'll introduce here in a moment. But I just wanted to point out for all of you listening on the very first episode, this idea has been over a decade in the making. It was easily 10, 12 years ago that I put together this idea to capture the stories of all the missionaries out in the field so that people could hear it for inspirational purposes and obviously for the fun, because there's tons of fun stories and crazy stories. There's also really good spiritual stories, and you really don't get to hear all of the different stories that missionaries have to tell. And I feel like there needs to be a really good place where that can happen. So that's the purpose of this podcast. As you start listening, please enjoy it. Hopefully it inspires you. And if there's any of you out there who are considering going on a mission, either as a young adult going on your first mission, or if you are a couple in your older years considering going on a mission as well, then I hope this inspires you. So thank you all for joining us today. And our guest today is Shane Browning, and we can actually introduce him as Elder Browning. My name is Will Bozeman. I'm your podcast host for the Best Mission Stories, and I will go by Elder Bozeman on this show. So yes, so Elder Browning.
It's like the good old days.
Elder Browning, give us a quick introduction. We can take as long as you want, but give us an introduction about where you're from, your story, and what mission you served in, and then we'll get into some of the questions about your mission. Go for it.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, I'm Elder Browning for this episode. I grew up in Tennessee, just a little bit outside of Nashville. And spent essentially my entire life there, as a youth. And then 2001, went on my mission to the Washington Spokane mission. And that's actually where I met Elder Bozeman. And he was my first companion and trainer on the mission. And we had a lot of fun.
So I will tell you this. I reached out to Elder Browning here a while back, just recently, and I said, hey, I want to put you on the show. I want you to be the very first guest on the very first episode, because he and I had some of the best experiences on the mission together. But I don't want everyone to think this is going to be a recap of Elder Bozeman's mission and all of his companions. But Elder Browning and I had some great times and had some really good experiences. But thank you. And you are from Tennessee. Did you grow up in the church?
Yeah. Born and raised. I was actually born while my dad was out at BYU.
Okay. All right then. And well, that's great. And I myself, I am from Alabama. Grew up in Alabama, born into the church. My parents joined when I was, let me get it right. They will correct me when they listen to this. But if I remember correctly, we got sealed as a family a couple months after I was born. So I was an infant. There's a picture of me with my parents in front of the DC temple when I was an infant. So, I mean, they joined just before I was born. But that being said, been a member my whole life as well. Served a mission. I went out in 2000, just before Elder Browning here. And and yes, ended up being his trainer. Not that he needed a trainer. It was quite a bit the opposite. He trained me, and even still to this day, he's the more responsible of the two of us. But that being said, though, we had a great time on this. We do have some of the same stories. So this is a unique situation. As we go, lots of people on the show will probably not have the same stories. So yes, that being said, that's our background. Go ahead,
So
Elder.
I just want to say real quick, for 100% certain that when President Funk saw that I was from Tennessee, he was like, we got to put him with another Southern boy. You know that happened.
Yes, President Funk. I haven't actually kept up with him. I don't know where he is now, but yes, he was. He was great. He was great. He did think that. Okay, Elder Browning, what is one of the most, I guess, impressive stories from your mission? Well, I mean, obviously, anything that you don't want to share, you don't have to share. But if there is one event that stands out to you that would define your mission to you, what would that be?
So this is one. It's not directly when we were together, but it is something that always kind of stuck with me from when we served together. I was in my second area in Kennewick, Washington, and one of the things that you had always impressed upon me is that sometimes folks that are just members of the ward, they kind of try to run over the missionaries a little bit, and try to like tell them to do things that aren't necessarily our responsibility or that we shouldn't even be doing in some cases. But anyway, so all of that is kind of a foundation for this story. So my second area, my second companion in that second area, we were teaching a lady, and she was married to a guy that was actually related to some of the folks in Hermiston. And so again, another Elder Bozeman serving connection. And that's how we kind of got in with these folks and started teaching them. And the husband was a member of the church already. The wife was a member of another faith. But she let us come in and talk to her and teach her. And we visited them regularly, and we read scriptures with them, and we went through all of the lessons. And back in those days, it was the set lessons 1 through 6, and
Yep.
we'd done all that stuff. And we had one of our ward mission leaders, because we covered 2 wards. The ward that covered where this lady lived, that ward mission leader, he told us in no uncertain terms to quit wasting our time, that missionaries have been through there. She's just not interested. It's not, you're spending all this time over there, like nothing is going to come of this. And being a true Southerner, I dug in my heels, and we kept going over there. And we're just visiting them on a regular basis, and we'd gotten through all of the 1 through 6 discussions. And at that point, we were just trying to keep reading scriptures with her. And we were reading, I can't remember exactly, I'd have to go back and consult my journal or something, but it was one of the Nephis we were reading. And I had this impression after we finished to ask her to be baptized. And it was one of those moments where you're like, I don't think that's right. You just like, is that the Spirit talking to me, or am I just like, going off on a tangent here? But I just felt it really strongly, and I looked over at my companion, and he had that look in his eye, like he was feeling it too. I was like, all right, we're gonna do this. And so, I just laid it on the table for her and said, hey, will you follow the example of Jesus Christ by being baptized? And she sat there for a second, kind of stunned by it, because we'd been through all this before. And she just was like, yeah, I will. And we're just like, yeah, you're so excited. But anyway, yeah, so she got baptized, and it wasn't for me getting to rub it in that mission leader's face, but that was a nice little nice little side effect of that. But yeah, that is one that has always stuck with me, that experience of, don't give up on anybody, and we don't know anyone's heart. We don't know when they're going to be ready. We just got to be there, Anyway.
I mean, look, I should have warned you. There's going to probably be tears on the show. For all the listeners, there will be tears on the show. You're making me think of a lot of different scenarios too. If I remember correctly, I don't remember if I told you this. I know I wrote it down in many places, but one of my policies, if you will, was I make them say no, make them tell me to leave them alone. Like I wouldn't let anybody off the hook. If they said, I'm interested, I'd like to learn. I'm like, great. Well, you just committed yourself to about, the next 365 days of me knocking on your door until you answer it and say, yes, I'll learn, or no, leave me alone, one or the other. I make them say no. I don't just drop them. And I used to do that all the time. Do you remember the story of, I don't know if you're with me, Audra Arias? Remember her, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Pete and all of
yes.
them,
Yeah. So do you remember, I don't know if I had you before, but do you remember the story of that? How we got to them? Do you remember? No,
yeah,
you weren't with me yet.
Yeah, I wasn't there yet, but you did tell me the story, and I definitely learned this, like, stay after it from you.
So the story is that me and Elder Jodine, oh my gosh, okay, it's been so long. Me and Elder Jodine were on bikes. We're riding bikes, and to get back to the apartment from one of the main intersections, it was equally distant either direction. So whoever was in the front just picked the direction they're going to go, and we go that way, not a big deal. I was in the front, and I decided to go to the left. I felt like that would be the better option. Half mile down the road, somebody's sitting out with a car that's not working and trying to push it. And so we stopped and helped them push the car. It was a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whoever. And I was like, hey, great, they asked us, obviously saw the name tags, right? And what are you guys doing? Well, we're elders, missionaries, and, be happy to teach you about, Jesus Christ, teach you about our church. And they said, sure, sounds good. Well, they gave me their address and their number, right? We knocked on their apartment door for about 4 months. It was crazy. It was like, it was every night, you go on team ups in the evening, right? Every night, if you have multiple appointments, you team up with local members. In case any of you listening aren't aware of that, most of the time I'll say mission areas, because a lot of times in more populated LDS areas, it's not quite, like that, but maybe it is. I didn't serve in one of those areas. And we'd have multiple appointments in the evening and split up. And every time I would either be myself or I would have somebody else go and knock on that door to see if they were home. It was so bad that they were hiding from us. And one time, Elder Jodine was walking around the building to go up the stairs and knock on the door, and they were coming on the other side of the building, and they saw him and ran away. And then he's like, Elder Bozeman, just take them off the list. They saw me and ran away, man. Like, they're not interested. And I was like, nope, They have to say no. Like, it's not my call. They said they were interested in learning about Jesus Christ. So we're going to keep trying to teach them about Jesus Christ until they tell us to leave them alone. And he's like, okay, all right. So we kept knocking, kept knocking. One afternoon, we were on our way home, and it was still daylight, and it was, we're heading out, and he was like, hey, where are you going? We're going to stop by and knock on their door. I can't even remember their name because they don't play any factor in the story other than that I wouldn't leave them alone. And we go up, and he's like, not again. And so he didn't want to go up the stairs. He was like, you can do it. I'm not going up the stairs anymore. I think he kind of set that rule. He's like, I'll go along with your obsession to make people say no, but I'm not going to walk up the stairs anymore. I'm like, okay. All right. So I go knock on the door, and someone answered the door for the first time in like 4 months. Maybe, I don't remember. It was 3 or 4 months, whatever. Long time. Somebody answered the door, but it wasn't the couple. It was somebody else. And she answered the door, and it was Audra, and she was a babysitter. She was watching their kid. And I was like, Jody, get up here. And so he came up because, I can't just talk by myself, right? So I went up there, and we just said, hey, obviously you're alone here, but we're looking for the couple. So, oh, well, they're not here, and I'm just babysitting. And I was just like, hey, maybe you'd like to learn about Jesus Christ. That's what we do. We teach lessons. And she was like, oh, interesting. Found out she had a friend who was a member of the church, right? And that friend, I said, hey, this is what I used to do all the time. Throw a party, right? Hey, let's all get together. You know somebody in the church? That's great. I'll call them, and we'll all have a party at their house. There'll be snacks and everything. I used to do that all the time. It was great. And she said, okay, sure, sounds great. So I called up the member, and I was like, hey, I just ran into your friend. She wants to, do lessons. And the member's like, oh my gosh, okay. Went over there. Audra invited 4 more people. It was Pete, Chantel, and the other 2. There's a husband-wife couple that came, right? Remember them? I don't know. You weren't there yet. Either way.
Yeah.
Anyways, I know this is a long story, but Audra, Chantel, and Pete all got baptized. The other couple, I think, ended up moving away. They were leaving like a week or 2 later anyway. They left. But those 3 that got baptized, and Audra, I kept in touch with her for years. I mean, I think she was active, and she was, I think, last time I checked, she was a Leaf Society president in her ward years ago. So I mean, but the lesson behind that one is just like what you said earlier. You didn't stop, and everyone's telling you it's a waste of your time. And that's what happened. That's what happened to me too. It happened to you. It happened to me too. Everyone's telling me it's a waste of my time. And I didn't even know this Pete. It could have been, I didn't even know the couple that never even wanted to talk to us. I don't think, like, it could have been a huge waste of time, but ended up sticking with it. I just kept saying to myself, if they really don't want to learn, they'll just say no. Eventually they'll just say no, but I need to actually hear that from them, or I don't feel comfortable just letting them go. And then people used to say, Elder Bozeman, you have a huge list of people on your contact list. And I was like, well, yeah, because I never let anybody go. I make them say, and here's a list of people who we don't talk to anymore. They all said no, right? And I'm like, eventually they'll say no, and I'll put them over on the other side. But no, I just, that story you just said just really brought back that whole experience. And I've told that story to several people before, that with the whole idea that you just don't give up on someone, and even if, aside from don't give up, it's not my call to give up. And as a missionary, I didn't feel like it wasn't my call to quit on them, right? They said yes, and I had to keep going until they said no. Like, that's how I felt, and that whole mentality really served me well, because there's a lot of people that I was able to connect with, later on, weeks later, months later, or whatever, who I finally connected with. There's lots of scenarios of that, but like, I'm glad that happened to you as well. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That stuck with me my whole mission. Like, I mean, it really did. Like, I never gave up on anybody. We just keep going.
You never really know. Okay, so in that same area, Tom, you were there for
Oh,
all of Tom, right?
oh yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah. Love Tom.
yes, and you said, I said, what's a story that defines your mission, right? I will tell you the story that defines my mission in the first episode because no one's going to want to hear that story every single episode, right? But this is the story that defines my mission was Tom. Uh, he was his wife and kids were members. He was not. He had the lessons, the missionary lessons, I think 3 or 4 whole times, right? In the past. And so when we first met them, I met them the first day I was in that area because they showed up to pick us up for dinner. The whole family did. And we get to their house and then he's just in the back room. Like he didn't come out and talk to us. He didn't want to participate in any of our church shenanigans, and then, well, we're just having dinner, but he didn't want to get to know us because we're just, we're going to be different people, in 3 months, so I asked him, I was like, well, he's not going to come out for dinner. And they're like, nah, he's just in the back watching TV. And I thought I recognized a sound from what he was watching. And I was like, what the heck is he watching? And he's like, oh, it's just bass fishing videos or bass fishing shows. And I was like, he's watching Bill Dance. I was like, my dad watches Bill Dance, bass fisher, and Bill Dance happens to, let me remember correctly, not that anyone cares about bass fishing. I believe he's from Tennessee, and he wears a Tennessee Volunteers hat on his show. So there's the connection to Elder Brown.
There it is.
There he is. So I was like, I went back to the back room and I knocked on the door real quick, and I was like, I heard you're watching some Bill Dance in here, and he's like, yeah, like totally perked up. And I was all like, I said, I grew up on Bill Dance. And I was like, and me and my dad bass fished my whole life. I'd been in probably a half dozen tournaments. And he was like, and all of a sudden, he actually wanted to talk to me. It was the first time he wanted to talk to a missionary in years, they said. So that little connection right there just actually opened the door for a conversation. He invited me over to practice out in the yard with rods. So that was the first, real like thing we did together was he invited me over to see his tackle boxes and his lures and practice out in the yard and stuff like that. We kept talking, and he said, you know what, I would be happy to do the lessons again. I'll just tell you right now, though, I've had them before, and I know what you're going to say, and it's like, so I'm just gonna let you know, just let you down easy right now. Right. He's like, I don't, I'll listen. I'll do the lessons. I know that you can't come over here unless you have a reason for it. It's like, you're not supposed to just come hang out. So I know I need to do these lessons if you guys are going to come over. And I think that's why he did the lessons. So we'd come over and talk about bass fishing. His wife and kids were super happy about that. Went over to their house and had lessons. I don't think you were with me when we were having the lessons yet. I mean, you came in later, or did you come in for the lessons?
I think maybe the end, like the last one or two, maybe.
So I found out when they kept saying he'd had the lessons, I thought he had all of them. Found out he never made it past the third one.
Right.
And it was because all the missionaries before him had kept on. They got into an argument with him. On the third lesson, there were some principles that they were teaching him, and he would argue against them, and they would argue back with him and try and explain how he was wrong. So I found that out. It never actually got through all the lessons, all right? And we were in the third lesson, and he started to get combative. And I was like, okay. I was like, I can understand this is much more sensitive to you than I didn't know. It's like I didn't know you had such a strong opinion, so much passion for, I think it was actually on the priesthood and his past experiences in other churches, things like that. So I was just like, I get it. And I'm not here to say that, you're incorrect and that your upbringing and all this stuff is wrong. I don't want to say any of that stuff. So how about this? Let's just move on to the next lesson. And he was like, okay, fine. So what's the next lesson? Number four. Lesson number four. Well, you know what it is, right? It's it's eternal marriage, right? It's the family and eternal marriage.
Love,
He had,
chastity, all that stuff.
yeah, it's all that. Yeah, all that stuff. Yes, yes. But it was eternal marriage, and he had never actually heard the principles of eternal marriage from a missionary, right? And so and he's a big burly guy, right? You know,
Oh,
Tom
yeah. Big
Tom has
time.
got a beard. He's big. He could be like a weightlifter, and he's like a lumberjack. He's a lumberjack, you know. And he just sits over in the corner like this. You know, it cracks me up like thinking back on it. But he in that fourth discussion, um, we were talking about the eternal marriage being sealed, and he asked a couple of questions, and he was all like, "Wait, so married forever, sealed forever?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I assumed he'd heard all this, right? I assumed that he knew these things. He had all the other missionaries from the past, right? And he started tearing up, and he's like, that's the most that's the most sincere thing that he's like, I've never heard that before. He's like, I did not know. I didn't know that was part of the church. I didn't know that being sealed was part of this. Like, I didn't know. And he started tearing up. That's the only time I ever saw him cry. Probably the only time anyone ever saw him cry. But he started tearing up, and it was at that point that he actually took all of this seriously. And months went by. He didn't get baptized right away. It was definitely an iceberg that had to be melted. And he finally ended up getting baptized. It took him. I think he got baptized the last couple of weeks. I was in that area. You were there. You stayed, so you got to see him continue on in the church and be part of the actual ward. But yeah, yeah, yeah. That one got me because it's like somebody who literally told me, I'll let you off easy here. I'm not gonna care about what you have to say, like, but you never give up, right? Everyone even told me that it would just be like a quote unquote just practice talking to him because he's not going to do anything. And it's just like what you said earlier. But you never know. You never know the heart. You never know when it's going to be the time for them to hear the Spirit. They're never, you don't know when that is. It's not your call, right? To decide when someone else is ready for the gospel. That's not my decision. It's not the family's decision, So anyways, I'm going to start crying here too. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say one of the things that stuck with me from that time too was, I remember this distinctly. I don't know why, but for some reason this stuck with me, was when we read 3 Nephi 11 with him. And he loved that chapter. He was like, I have never seen, it spelled out like this anywhere else, that Christ is the God of the world. And, he was just so impressed by that. And that was one thing that stuck with me throughout my mission was, the importance of sharing the Book of Mormon with people, because, a lot of people aren't familiar with it. And that was something that moved him. And like you said, it was probably just chipping away, a little bit of the ice, but it was still something that, got him going a little further. And all we did was just read the scriptures with him. And that was awesome.
Yeah. No, I remember going over just to read scriptures. I remember that. One of the other events associated with Tom that marks my memory of the entire mission. So Tom is my if I were to say I was called on a mission to Spokane, Washington to meet one person, it would have been Tom, right? But do you remember the day that we rode our bikes out to see him?
I think about that day a lot.
I would put this. I'm going to put this in a movie one day. But it was summertime. It was 1 billion degrees. And if you don't know, Eastern Oregon is a desert. I mean, it's, for anybody who's listening. And we didn't have a ride. Most of the time, if it's more than 10 miles away, you just get a ride. We had a ride or whatever. We told him we were going to stop by and see him that day. We didn't have to go. It wasn't like an official appointment, but we didn't have any appointments that afternoon. I was like, let's go out and see Tom. And you're like, all right. And we took off and we're riding. And if I remember correctly, we were just so hot and so drudging going up that big, huge hill and whatever else in the sun, in the heat. I think if I remember correctly, we started singing a Weezer song together. It was the only thing that we could think of to kind of get our motivation up. And it was the Buddy Holly Weezer song. And we were just singing that as we were cranking away in the heat. It was everybody thinks missionaries only sing hymns. I know we should, but at that point, my mind was kind of fading away in the heat, and it was all just we started singing. Anyways, we got there and basically almost fell out on the grass in his yard. When we showed up at the door and he saw us, we're beet red and sweaty, and we're like, "Hey, Tom," and he was like, "Oh, surprised!" His face was like, "What? You rode out here? You rode out here?" He's like, "It's 100 and some degrees outside." And I was like, "We made it. We made it." And he gave us all this water and lemonade and everything. But he told me later that proved to him that we cared about him genuinely. That we didn't even have an official appointment. We just rode out to see him, right? And that was what changed his attitude about our sincerity. Are we just teaching him to try and get a baptism? Or do we actually care about him as a person? And he told me later that was the day that he decided that we cared about him as a person above anything else. We just came out there to see him. And it wasn't easy. But anyways, that's one of my defining moments in the mission for me, is just that bike ride out there to go see him on a day we didn't have to do it at all. And it changed his whole outlook on everything, the church and everything. And he, a few months later ended up getting baptized. So, good times.
Love it.
Elder Browning, is there any other story, item, thing you want to leave everyone with before we sign off?
Oh man, yeah, that's a tough one. I have a million stories. I loved my mission. I love the people I served with. The people that I had opportunities to serve. And, I think that's the most important thing that I learned about being a missionary. And I think that carries over into everything, really, is you just have to love these people. I mean, that's really what it's all about. And if you really love them, that's going to show. You're going to ride 1,000,000 miles in 1,000-degree weather and sweat through all of your clothes and do all of these things because you love them. And that was the main thing that I took away from my mission, was just love, learning to love folks.
Yeah, I will agree with you on that. I think it was the first time that I felt like I loved someone genuinely that I had no relationship to. I was only there to help. I was only there to do something to help them. I wasn't there for any other reason. I didn't have any other purpose, no reason. There's nothing I was going to gain, it was just there to serve. It's just there to serve, and it just.
Well, and real quick, I gotta toot the horn for you a little bit too. One of the things that you taught me was, and this stuck with me for better or worse, was there's always kind of a push for numbers. Maybe not so much these days, but back in our day. but you never made it about that. When you were teaching me the ropes and everything, it was about, these are people and we want to help them. And so it was never yeah, we got to knock this many doors or we got to talk to this many people. It was, let's just go help people. Anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, honestly, I had more success getting people to talk to me by just talking to them and not preaching to them, right? I mean, all missionaries know that. You gotta be their friend, and you gotta talk to them, or just start working in their yard. That's also one of my favorite, if you want to call it a strategy, and to see a giant pile of yard work to do and stop off and say like, hey, I would like to get, a good workout in today. If you're okay, I'll do your yard work for you today. And people are like staring at you like you're crazy. And next thing you know, they're inviting you in the house. It doesn't always lead to somebody who even wants discussions, but you prove that you're there to serve. It just feels good to know that you're there to help somebody, even if they are not interested in the message, because you're still accountable to serve there regardless, right? It just feels good. So, well, thank you for saying that too. I appreciate that. We will definitely do another episode with Elder Browning because I know you've got more stories we didn't get to today. But in the interest of keeping people from falling,
two journals worth.
Okay, yes. Yeah, nice. Love it. Well, before the next episode, you have to go sort through the journal and find some of your favorite stories, and we'll come back with it. But until then, we'll sign off and let everybody know. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And you're watching The Best Mission Stories. Our guest, Elder Shane Browning, today on the show, and Elder Bozeman. And we will see you next time. And thank you for watching.